I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Geneva Historic Preservation Commission for Tuesday, September 20th, 2022. We'll start with a roll call.
Hartman. Here. Jensen.
Here.
McManus.
Here.
Solomon. Here. Stazen.
Here.
Zinke. Here. Chairman Zelmer.
Here. Thank you very much. We have a quorum. Okay, our next item on the agenda is a 5-minute field guide. Michael? Approval of minutes, I'm sorry. Approval of minutes for August 16th, 2022. Does anyone have any corrections / additions, revisions? If not, if I can get a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the minutes.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, and call the roll.
Hartman.
Here.
For minutes, approval of the minutes.
I was absent.
You just
Abstain.
abstain.
Jensen. Aye. McManus.
I'll abstain as well.
Solomon.
Approve. Aye.
Stazen.
Aye.
Zinke. Aye. Chairman Zelmer.
Aye. The minutes are approved. Next thing on our agenda is now the 5-minute field guide set in stone. Michael?
Thank you, Chairman Zelmer. Tonight's 5-minute field guide is set in stone visual characteristics of stone masonry. As you are aware, I have focused on broad topics and minutia of preservation, and tonight is about a building material. Of all building materials, stone may be one of the most diverse options available. The visual characteristics of stone buildings are derived from a variety of quarrying techniques and construction methods. We have spoken in past 5-minute field guides about the variety of details that provide visual interest across a stone wall. The type of stones or stones selected, the shape and dimension of the stone, the patterns of coursing, as well as the width, color, and detail of mortar joints. Over time, the durability and weathering of building stone affects the aesthetics and sometimes the durability of a stone wall. These are all images of stone within Geneva. You can try to figure out if you know where every one of them are while I'm doing the 5-minute field guide. See how well you know the historic district. In recent times, the art of stone dressing has become increasingly overlooked as one of the most significant visual characteristics of stone construction. Although a wide variety of stone dressings is available to the architect, designer, engineer, and mason, only a few methods are in common use today. Tonight's 5-minute field guide reviews some types of stone dressing that you may have seen as you look at historic buildings, locally or in your wider travels. Rock face finish is exactly what it's described as. It looks like natural rock, but it's actually a hammer and chisel method used to chip away the surface of the quarried stone into a rough and irregular texture. Historically, dressed stone also includes a tooled border, that thin edge that's shown in the right-hand image. That tooled edge is known as a margin or draft lines, which help to keep a neat appearance to a unit of stone. Some of the types of dressing includes tool work, which is a series of continuous grooves across the width of a stone to the draft or margin line. When well done, it makes a very good finish for sandstone and limestone, and is often seen in things such as limestone sills and window lintels here in the Geneva area. Broached work is a tooling method. There's a series of continuous grooves chiseled at an angle over the surface of a stone. And drove work is similar to the tool work on the left. However, it is done in rows across the face of the stone. And boasted work is similar to drove work, except it combines the work of the broached tooling method with the angled elements across the face. Here is an example of broached stonework. Pointed work is used as kind of a fine finish technique when you're trying not to embed the face of stone by more than a half an inch. It takes the rough faces off the stone from the quarry, and using a specialized stone chisel, it provides a grooved or chipped surface, a very finely chipped surface on the face of the stone unit. There are two types of pointed work. There's rough pointed work, which is a deeper engraving, and usually using a slightly larger chisel, and then fine pointed work, which creates more of a stippled or a uniform rough texture across the face of the stone. An even finer example of a stippling of the face of stone is bush-hammered work, which uses very fine points and also is found in the sills and lintels of buildings in the Geneva area. Patent-hammered work, again, is another type of finish on the face of a stone. The stone is first dressed to a fairly smooth surface, and then it's treated with a patent hammer, which has a particular face on the hammer that creates a series of notches and grooves and cuts in the face of the stone. The United States government requires 10 cuts to the inch, while ordinary work usually has 8 cuts, and that's a cost difference. But you'll see in those who've worked with stone specifications, especially for the federal government, will see that they have very specific standards for what constitutes patent-hammered work in federal government buildings. Crandling is another interesting type of finish where the lines all in the, on the left, you see a pattern of crandling work where all the lines are roughly parallel to one another and kind of creates the look of a wood grain across the face of the stone. Where on the right, you can see another example of crandling where the lines crisscross and create kind of a irregular diamond pattern across the face of the stone. While this is not as common in the Midwest, it's very common. If you are out in the eastern part of the United States, you'll see this as a way to finish sandstone, which is slightly softer than the limestone we have around here. And then a pattern that you don't see too often here, but it is around in Illinois and in the Midwest, is vermiculated work, which takes its name from the worm-eaten appearance of the stone face. This is very labor-intensive and therefore is very costly, and has traditionally been used in areas where you want to bring a high level of visual articulation to a stone wall, such as coins or perhaps a base of a major building. These are just a few of the types of stone dressing that are available to the designer and the architect. I didn't go into all of them there, but I mentioned smooth-faced. There's also furrowed, reticulated, dragged, combed, and rubbed finishes that are all known to stone finishers who work in quality construction. As in the past 5-minute field guide sessions, I hope that this introduction encourages you to understand the variety of finishing details and techniques that provide the character-defining features of historic architecture. And when we come across these in our own projects, I hope that you'll be able to remember that these are some of the dressing techniques that we have found throughout Illinois and throughout the United States. That's the end of my 5-minute field guide tonight. Are there any questions? Comments?
It was interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
When I was in Australia a couple years ago, like in the capital area of Australia.
Your microphone is.
Mike?
The Capitol building of Australia had a great deal of stone work like that. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the one that sort of looks like this. Vermiculite, yes. That was on their public buildings, and I had never seen that before, and it was quite interesting to see.
Very good. Okay. Thank you, Michael. The next item on our agenda is a review of permit applications, 302 South 3rd Street, case number 2022-068.
Thank you, Chairman Zellmer. Case 2022-068 is for a front porch alteration and screen fencing on a contributing property. The property is located in the southern portion of the local Geneva Historic District and in the southwestern quadrant of the Central Geneva Historic District listed in the National Register of Historic Places. The property is familiar to many of you as Graham's Chocolates. The project consists of a historic property with a historic residence and a contemporary stoop that is out in front of the actual historic porch. So that's what you see in the front, that is the entrance stoop. The historic porch has been enclosed as a part of the retail space. What is being proposed is a reconstruction of the front stoop, and as a contributing property, I have to bring this to the Historic Preservation Commission, even though it's not a historic element, because it is on the front of the historic property. The HPC does not have to comment, but they're also applying for a new screen fencing around some mechanical units on the north side of the building that you see on the right portion of the slide. So what is actually being proposed is to simply replace the non-historic stoop with a new stoop. The existing stoop has some deterioration, and so it's being replaced with composite materials. The decking, the skirting, fascia railings, the posts are all basically composite materials. And weather resistant. Again, they're not removing any historic material in their proposal. They're simply rebuilding the current deck. The deck project will include, or the stoop project will include, the reinstallation of the existing handicap railings to make them compliant with code. The applicant has spoken with the building commissioner and is understand that everything will be constructed to be code compliant. So if stair treads and risers need to be adjusted slightly to meet code, that will be done as part of the work. With that brief introduction, I would turn the podium over to Chris Conrads, who's the landscape architect who is overseeing this project and doing the work. And he's here to either elaborate anything I may have missed or answer any of your questions you may have. Chris.
Good evening, how you doing?
Good.
I think Michael explained everything pretty well. It's a pretty simple project that we are proposing to doing. The existing, front deck in front of the building is rotting and deteriorating. We just want to replace them with more durable materials, being the composite decking and powder-coated aluminum railings. On the north side of the property, they have some mechanical equipment, which is pretty unsightly. We just want to install a short little 42-inch high cedar little screen around the mechanical equipment that would be stained white to match the building.
Okay.
So, any questions?
Mr. Conrad?
Yes.
Okay, I have a fairly good idea of what you're talking about, but
Wait,
Oh, she's got it. I'm sorry, never mind.
sorry.
I'm on. Okay?
I'm used to asking you to do that, I'm sorry.
Shall I speak very loud? Anyway, looking at the photograph that's on the right.
Correct.
Are you intending to have the stairs and the stoop all black as it is there?
Not black, a dark gray.
A dark gray?
Yeah, I'm sorry, the renderings look a little bit dark, but yeah, the flooring and the fascia and the risers would be a very dark gray color. It's called Alaskan driftwood.
Alaskan driftwood?
Alaskan driftwood.
Okay.
The railings would be white, the railings and balusters would be white, and the caps would be black. They do intend, not right now, but in the near future, to, update the front of the property to a more historical look, being like a black and white look. They're not applying for that right now, but they do want to make sure that the updates or the improvements that we make kind of go along with that look. And these renderings are representative of what the building will look like with the changes.
The door that's there in the rendering, is that the door that's there now?
Correct. Yeah, I'm sorry. What you see in the glass, that's just kind of part of the software. But yeah, the existing door, everything in the structure would stay the same. They were talking about updating the paint job. being the paint color of the siding and the shutters and the awnings.
I see, okay. Because that is very startling,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the way it looks right now, and.
Right.
And.
Yeah, they don't want to change anything with the building, just colors to kind of go along with everything else that's going on downtown Third Street.
Well, that's true, but if, if your gray, your Alaskan gray
Right.
is close to black as this is, I don't know, that is very, very startling.
Okay.
And, well, I don't like it at all. It does not look historic to me in any way.
I apologize, it's much more close to, a darker gray than a black,
Well-
absolutely.
The color that's on there now, that's a relatively pale gray, isn't it?
Right, correct.
So there will be a dramatic change. Okay.
Yeah, I guess you could say that, there would be. That's fair.
Do any of my compatriots have an issue with how startling that looks? Or is it just me?
I almost wonder if the rendering is just showing some stark contrasting colors in general,
In all honesty, it does. When you look at the actual product in person, I can only do so much with computer software,
yeah.
and how it appears on your screen.
Yeah.
It definitely doesn't look black and as dark. It's not going to look as dark as it's showing right now.
I see.
On this picture, I can assure you.
If I may, I think, Lisa, were you referring to, the elevation of the building is white, and the photo is gray, so that increases the contrast
It does, yes.
measurably, is the intent, and maybe I'm a little slow this evening, but I understand that the scope is just the porch,
Right.
but that elevation is distinctly different
Correct.
from, so is the intent to change the elevation as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
The permit application is only for the stoop. They have discussed repainting and putting new awnings with a new color scheme, which does not require Historic Preservation Commission review.
Right.
So the only thing that's being proposed under this permit is the reconstruction of the existing non-historic stoop.
Okay.
So if the rendering is not 100% accurate, like I said, the door and the windows are not being changed on the porch, that's just the limitations of the rendering.
Okay.
The only thing the permit is in for is the reconstruction of the porch and the reinstallation of the railings and the grab bars.
And again, I apologize, but currently, but I guess given that we're trying to compare this porch to something else, is the overall intent to change the elevation as well. I'm comparing, I have apples and oranges here, we all do, where we're looking at an elevation, a porch that seems to be more contemporary in design than what currently would be there, and dealing with the contrasting two, but then are we to apply this in the future context of what's going to happen with the elevation changes?
Well, I don't think the elevations are changing. There's nothing changing on the elevation, it's just the color of the building, and we don't have any control over the color of the building.
Right, I understand, okay.
So it's, you're not changing anything in the way of the building, it's just a paint job, basically.
This is correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think the railings also probably a little bit, they suffer from the rendering of it looking a little more stark than it would come off as. I know there'll be more, though undoubtedly with white, you said it, the balustrades and the top rails
Yes,
are gonna be white.
yes.
So there'll be more contrast, but it's not gonna be as stark as that, I would think.
Correct.
So,
And when this came in, I didn't recall all the details of the existing porch, but basically all the materials are very close in same size, dimension as what's there. What's going to probably change is the run of the stairs is probably going to be a little bit longer because they're going to make it code compliant for tread and riser. But there's nothing, there is nothing that is a historic recreation in the existing stoop. It's a very straightforward stoop as it is right now. So there's not a lot of architectural detail to the current stoop if you've been on that particular stoop. So they're replicating dimensions, they're replicating railing, their stairway is not changing in width. The framing is all staying the same from my reading of the permit and
Correct.
talking with the building commissioner. So it truly is a reskinning and then making the stairs compliant with code for this project.
Okay, thank you.
So
So
the
when
door-
is that exterior painting happening? Do we know? Are you familiar with that end of that, Michael?
We've talked about some of the exterior upgrades they want to make with the painting and the awnings. I don't know if it's going to happen this season with weather and contractors, but it's going to happen
In the
as soon as it can be.
short-term
The short
future? Yeah, I would say I wouldn't want to see it looking like that with the existing structure gray and staying like that for 5-10 years.
No,
Meanwhile,
this is an immediate change they're looking to
Okay,
have completed.
okay.
So then our understanding is that the door and the windows on either side of the door will stay the same.
Absolutely.
They are there.
They are there, we are not
They
changing.
will stay there.
Yes,
Okay. All right, thank you.
you got it.
I'm fine. Any other questions or comments? What about so we don't really have anything to say about, we don't have to say anything about the screening around the,
No, the screen wall comes under fences, which is an administrative review, and it's already been approved.
oh, okay. I guess the other question is that you, with the replacement of awnings, will that come in front of us at all, or no?
Awnings do not, if there's no graphics on them whatsoever,
It
and
doesn't
they're not
come in-
hanging over the street, it doesn't even require a permit.
Oh,
So
It's like shutters,
It's like
basically.
shutters. If it has graphics, it is reviewed as a sign, or if it's over a public sidewalk, it's reviewed for code compliance.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments from the commission?
No?
If that, can I get a motion to approve it? Sure.
Motion to approve the proposed porch renovation for 302 South Third Street and the screening of the mechanicals as presented.
And I'll second.
Okay.
Hartman.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
McManus.
Aye.
Sullivan.
Aye.
Stazen.
Aye.
Zinke.
Aye.
Chairman Zelmer.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is 418 Ford Street. I'm sorry, 200 Third Street. I'm jumping ahead
All night long?
all night long. 200 South Third Street, case 2022-069.
Thank you, Chairman Zelmer. 200 South Third Street is located in the South Geneva Historic District, in the south portion of the local Geneva Historic District and in the southwestern quadrant of the Central Geneva Historic District listed in the National Register of Historic Places. The property dates to about 1870. However, major alterations were made in 1925 to the house and property, and the property has been renovated several times in the last 40 years as well. The area that's being brought to the HPC for your consideration is on the south side of the building. That is visible from Third Street across the very deep deck on the south side of the property. The view from the deck is on the left side, and if you go beyond the pergola that's remaining and is scheduled to stay, you can see what the elevation of the east elevation of the building looks like that's being considered for renovation. Also, if you look at the left side just at the right side of the pergola, there's a small little projection. That's also an area where the work is being proposed to occur. So the addition is considered non-historic, even though it is a relocated auto garage that was relocated as part of the renovations made in 1925. I've highlighted where the garage, the historic garage exists. However, the east facade, as you can see from the previous slide, has been heavily altered previously, and the rest of the building is either not visible from the public right-of-way or has been obscured by later additions. So again, where the red circle is on the upper left image would be about where the driveway went back to the garage, but there's a significant addition between the street and where the street face of the garage once existed. So the project consists of renovating the east facade of the rear wing of this building. Again, it's coming before the commission because it is visible from 3rd Street, even though the property has been altered over time. So this illustration is the architect's drawings showing what is being removed and being proposed to be removed. And then this view shows the proposed elevations. So the elevations consist of basically floor-to-ceiling steel door and window units, and then adding a standing seam metal roof to this rear wing as well. One of the interesting things that comes out of this is where the existing building has a great departure in proportions of the windows at that east facade. The proposed windows are more of a long window that kind of accentuate and mirror the Italianate dimensions of the windows in the existing historic porch. So even though it's going to be a very contemporary addition, it does have a nod to the historic proportions of the historic part of the home. So with that, I would turn it over to Dan McFadden, who's the owner, and his architect, Terry Adams. They're here to elaborate on the project and answer any of your questions.
Hello. Greetings.
Thanks for listening to hearing my project today. I think that Michael did a pretty good job of explaining what we're trying to do. Really interested in feedback from you guys, but maybe a little context on why we're doing it, if that
Sure.
helpful. Okay. So the space in question is the main entrance to a leased space in the building. There are 2 leased spaces on the first floor of the building currently, and there will be 2 going forward. On the floor plan on the left side of the screen, there is one of my tenants owns a clothing store, and are you trying to point? Okay.
Okay, so, yeah, this is the clothing store here in this particular space. And the dividing portion between the 2 spaces is right there. So the main entrance for this space is off of this structure here, so.
And my business is in there currently, right? So, and we share a bathroom. We share the one bathroom with my current tenant, which is in my space. So we're going to create a tenant separation, give my tenant her own bathroom, and then open up what you call my space, and do the exterior renovations, and then lease that space out. And so what I was going for was sort of a garden studio feel. My family had a landscape architect create a years ago, a landscape for the portion of the elevation between the elevation and the 70 feet to the sidewalk. It's just this long wooden deck. So this spring, we finished out that plan, removed some of the deck, and created more foliage. And so when we complete this part or this piece, I feel it will take, if you looked at this 20 years ago, the south side of the building and the deck was just sort of a dump. And we're going to take it up to the next level. And that's, I guess, all I wanted to say on top of what Michael had already done. And again, interested in your guys' questions and comments.
I have one quick question. What's the thoughts behind using standing seam roof rather than just asphalt shingles? Or, because I assume the rest of the building has an asphalt
Yeah.
shingle roof?
Yeah, well, A, I thought it was cool. B, and it has an integrity to it.
Sure.
And the building kind of, like some other buildings on Third Street that have been added onto, it kind of meanders. And now it sort of meanders with all the same materials. And we thought that where we created this garden studio was a very natural place to do something different so that it would look unique.
Sure.
And it would make sense that it's there. It's always bothered me that it just kind of, the building kind of keeps going. And I don't know what other material we could have chosen that would have the same effect.
Sure.
And I think Terry did a nice job of tying in the roof. And actually, the roof is a bit of a mess now, and that's getting cleaned up. That's really hard to,
You mean the slopes and all?
the slopes, yeah.
It just valleys and,
Semi-flat,
Yeah, yeah.
Well, looking at the two elevations, 3 and 4, somebody who is walking by on Third Street will be seeing elevation 3. Is that correct?
No,
No?
no, that's the side of the garage from the property to the south, which
Oh,
there's no, you can't even see that. That elevation was more drawn for for these windows here, which occur right here.
So if you were walking down the driveway going to Cocoon, and you got all the way to her front stoop, and you turn to the right, that's where.
That's
that
what
would-
you'd see, yeah.
Yeah,
But her building actually blocks this side. I mean, there's maybe 4 or 5 feet there or something. but
yeah, it's true.
Yeah, there's hardly, I mean, you really don't get the view of the side of the garage. But when you approach the new doorway here, then you'll see this. So what we're trying to do is we were trying to draw the eye from Third Street a little bit for this particular tenant, and have some display area to
okay.
draw some attention.
So Third Street is where actually on the drawing is Third Street. Okay, that's Third Street.
Yep,
So as I'm coming down Third Street and I look to my right,
correct.
I'm going to be seeing
You're gonna see
this.
but if you go to the next slide, with the full view, yeah. So this
I
is what you see, but then in front of this is where that big tree and the
Right,
pergola is. So
right,
it's-
right.
It's blocked a lot by the landscape, so,
Yeah, it's set back quite a bit.
yeah.
But with the tree there, that adds to the interest.
It does, yeah.
Yeah,
And
I've
that's-
threatened to cut it down a lot over the past
No.
few years, but the last straw was my arborist said I would put a place under that thing. That's how comfortable I feel.
Oh, really?
As far as its sturdiness.
Yeah. So
He said what, the arborist?
he said he would put his grandchildren under it.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's what he was saying.
He was worried about it falling
Right.
onto the
So
structure
in
or
other
something,
words,
eventually.
the arborist says the tree is in
It's good.
perfect health.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, good, thank you.
Yeah.
Now I can really visualize that. Thank
So
you.
remind me again, how do these finishes compare to what's on the main structure? Are they Are they the same? Is it just something just kind of a
That's a good
play off
question.
of-
That's a
yeah.
good question. So I don't think the color of the standing seam roof has been determined.
We haven't
Although
chosen the color yet, no.
it would be black or onyx or something like that, I would think, dark gray.
Some, yeah, probably match the windows.
I wanted to bring my inspiration picture, but Terry wouldn't let me bring it.
Oh, my. Okay.
So, but it's a cedar, it's a vertical cedar siding that is kind of grayed out, very natural. The doors are, think, sort of city steel, old steel storefront. Real narrow mullions, a lot of glass. And the existing building is painted cedar siding. To answer your question.
Thank
Does
you.
that answer?
It does,
Okay.
it does. Yeah, I think that from a scale perspective, it looks good. I think that the way that those entry doors are and the lights on the other side of each of those doors is, it all looks like it's in keeping with what's happening on the rest of the main building. I personally don't see any real issues with it. And it's so far back. I've walked past there a million times and I never see that building. So it's kind of peripherally seen from Third Street. Definitely not something that's highly visible. But I think it's a nice addition to what's happening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Michael, do we have purview over the color of the standing seam?
We do not at this point. There is a metal roofing policy that was begun to be drafted a couple of years ago because there was concerns that, as I have heard for the 10 years I've been here, we don't want another one of those blue roofs. But at this point, I kind of set that aside because of the last case that came forward with a factory finish. The commission was more than ambivalent about getting into factory finish colors. So I pulled off on the metal roofing policy after that discussion.
Any other comments from the commission? I get it.
Just a question, a question kind of irrelevant, but you're having outswing doors on the entrance to that new space?
Yeah, I believe, although the code with the occupancy load, may not require it, but, who knows going forward if, things change in the building and then it would be required, might as well swing them out now, so.
Okay.
Any other comments from the commission? George, anything?
No, I like it.
Okay. I guess, I think if everyone's, I think that Michael had laid out in the staff report all the requirements of the SIOS, the statement, the Secretary of the Interior standards, which this all meets, so I don't see an issue with that. So with that, can I get on a motion to approve?
Sure, I'll try it.
Sure.
I motion to approve 200 South Third Street. As presented.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay. If you could call the roll.
Hardman.
Aye.
Jennison.
Aye.
McManus.
Aye.
Solomon.
Aye.
Stazen.
Aye.
Zinke.
Aye.
Chairman Zelmer.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
We look forward to seeing it.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael.
Okay, the next permit application is 418 Ford Street. I did not skip ahead for that one. So case number 2022-071.
Yes, so 418 Ford Street, they are requesting a proposed rear addition and then also a rehabilitation of a garage, and it's a contributing property. Take a look here, it's going to be found in the northwest quadrant of the local Geneva Historic District. And now here are some, just kind of some existing photos. These are from last May. There's some subtle differences as to what appears there now, but just to kind of get a feel for what is currently there. And then also just note that they did come before the commission in May for a concept review. So there aren't too many differences to what's being proposed now. There are a couple subtle differences that we'll kind of highlight later on. But take a look here at what is being presented. So there's a fairly substantial addition being proposed in the rear of the property, and then also some work being done to the garage, the existing garage. Take a look here. So now here's what was presented back in May for the concept review. Kind of see the different elevations here. So this is a photo we took a couple weeks ago, just to kind of show the work that's been done on the attic windows. So just kind of note the difference there. That's what is existing now. And then again, the floor plans here. All right, so this is going to be the proposed addition and work. Kind of see from the front, you can kind of see, part of the rear addition on the north facade there to the left. And then you also see the work being done on the garage, kind of extending it upwards, adding another elevation there. And then on the south elevation, we can see, the proposed enclosed porch, and then also some deck work being done back there. Just note one of the changes from the concept review, and this isn't something that the HPC is subject to review, but the gable is a different direction from what was presented earlier in May. Now here again, in the west elevation, we can kind of see the gable elevation, or the gable roof changing direction there. One other difference on the proposed garage is going to be, instead of a window, we kind of struggled there, there's going to be a door on that west elevation. And then on the east elevation, just on the proposed addition, the basement level, there's going to be 2 basement level windows. Those weren't on the concept review, again, just kind of minor differences, but just something to take note of. And then we would like to invite applicant Tom, come on up and just help explain and answer some questions for you guys.
Good evening, thanks for having me.
Hello.
I'm Tom Wetmore, I live there with my family. There's really not too much to talk about. It's all stuff that we saw last review, except for those small minor changes that they pointed out. So I guess I'll open it to you for any questions or comments.
Is the east, I think it's the east elevation, was that the east elevation, is that even visible from the street at all?
It's set back pretty far.
Yes.
You'd be struggling to see it.
Okay.
And Tom, your property is, you're currently working on the tax assessment freeze project, right? For your-
We're already approved. I have the freeze. We're trying to maintain it. And that has been approved already from the state that what we're doing is within the requirements to maintain it.
Well, that's great.
So then these changes are okay with Springfield?
Correct.
I see, okay. Now, I'm just a little confused, looking at the east elevation. On the left side, the front of the house,
Front is going to be on the right.
the front's on the right.
Yeah.
So we're looking, that's at the back. Oh, that is so far back. Okay, that's no issue at all. So the front of the house is on the right-hand side. Okay, good, thank you.
Let me go back to the, Now, originally, you had in there the removal of the existing windows from the west right elevation there? That was part of the original concept that we approved?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we went down to, we eliminated the window in the pantry and went down to one window in the powder room.
And that was a replacement window that was in there?
All the windows in my house except for, there's a stained glass one on the west elevation, an original on the north. Everything else was a vinyl replacement window, except for what I've already replaced with Marvin Ultimate Series.
Okay.
And then just one more thing to note, the proposal is going to include the removal of the aluminum
Yep.
siding. and
Yeah,
then-
we've been talking about doing it since we came here the first time in 2013. And so, yeah, we are going to remove the aluminum siding, and hopefully the wood siding's in good condition. We can just repaint it.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yep. It looks beautiful from the front elevation, so I've got my fingers crossed.
Can I see the front elevation again? Thank you.
Okay, there we go.
And that garage is way back there also.
Really far back there, yeah.
Yeah. It's an optical illusion. It would
It
never
is,
look
yep.
like that.
Yeah, I remember we discussed that a lot the last time.
Yeah.
It'll look like it's right on front, but it,
It's way back there.
And the original submission that I sent to the state, we've already reduced it pretty dramatically from where I started. That dormer going up over the garage is a lot smaller than I'd like it to be, but it's still functional, and I think it's gonna look nice.
Good.
I think all your changes look okay, Tom. I mean, there's nothing really drastic with what you proposed back in May. Everything looks really well done and drawn up.
Thank you.
And you are actually getting down to almost the end of the season, aren't you?
Yeah, it'll be a question mark if we can start this year.
Yeah.
The big question, I haven't ordered windows yet.
Oh, you haven't?
No, window lead time's about 5 months right now,
Oh,
so,
good.
I think there's a very small chance that we'll dig at the very end of the year, but it's likely it'll be next spring.
Next spring.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really just depends on the weather at this point.
Right, right, okay. Okay. Looks great.
Okay. Unless anyone else has any comments, again, I think that Michael laid out the SOI standards for review of conformity, and I didn't see any issues with those when I went through them, unless anyone else on the commission has any of them.
No.
And then, so if I can get a motion to approve?
I move that we accept the changes to 418 Ford Street, the proposed additions, as presented this evening.
And a second?
I second.
Okay, call the roll.
Hartman.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
McManus.
Aye.
Solomon.
Aye.
Stazen.
Aye.
Denke.
Aye.
Chairman Zelman.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you very much, and good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Tom, with your permission, can I point out the little discovery we made?
Sure.
Just because I think it's an interesting little element. So, you know, we struggled a long time over this attic gable a couple months ago to determine what would be appropriate in this style. And we looked at a lot of different style books, and we were back and forth with the State Preservation Office and getting Tom his egress and getting the state happy and whatever. And we went back and forth several times. And so this is what we came up with, and this is very common in what we found in hundreds of similar classical revival homes that we looked at. But if you look at the soffit, when he revealed it, there's a little bay window shadow up in that soffit. And it surprised all of us. This is already approved, it was approved by the state, so, you know, there was no stopping it or no anything. But Tom asked me, he said he hasn't seen that detail before of a little bay window up there. I was able to find 4 or 5 examples of that detail with these little hanging bay windows, these tiny little bay windows that were up there. Never in a million years would I have guessed that this particular house had it's such a simplistic house in its detailing. I never would have suspected that it would have had a hanging bay window up in the gable, and neither did the state. So I just so you know, we're always living and learning and, you know, making best guesses when we can't find photo documentation. But this is one reason why we do ask for photo documentation as much as we can if we can find it. So we're not making Tom go backwards, but I was just absolutely shocked when I saw this, because I never would have imagined this house having a tiny bay window up in the attic gable. So we're always learning, so.
Was there any other ghosting on the siding or anything like that?
There's absolutely nothing. The only way that you can tell is just from that
Just
shadow
from that
line
shadow,
above.
yeah.
There's no support from below. It looks like a traditional windowsill was notched in on both sides on the
Okay.
on the cedar shingles. So it's really, I would have guessed it. Especially, it's a pretty ornate detail for a house that's
Sure.
fairly plain.
Very good. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay. Well, I am going to recuse myself for the next application, or permit.
The next 2 hours. We'll see you.
I certainly hope not.
And with the commission's permission, or approval and permission, I've asked George Solomon to take the chair's seat for this case.
I gotta move. I'm comfortable.
Too bad.
So the case before us now is 418 Ford Street, case number, I'm sorry, better go to the next one, there we go. Tonight was brought to you by Third Street and the number 418, just so you know. It's confused me the whole time I put this agenda together. Next case is 418 South Sixth Street, historic, case number 2022-072. This is a proposed replacement of front door and flanking side lights at a contributing property, and for disclosure, Chairman Zellmer has recused himself and stepped out of the city council chambers because this is the home he and his wife, Mary Agnes Zellmer, own, and this is a case being considered for them. The property is in the far southwest corner of the Central Geneva Historic District, and it's in the far southwest corner of the local historic district. The property is a relocated home that has been altered at least twice that we can document, potentially 3 times since it was moved. These are views of the street, and on the upper right is the south side or the left elevation, and then the lower right is the north elevation. So the house is associated with several interesting people, which may or may not have bearing on your deliberation this evening. So the house was moved by David Michael Flynn, who, I elaborated in the staff report, he was a very involved person in the Geneva community. He died shortly after he moved this house from the corner of State and South 4th Streets, and moved it to this location on South 6th Street. We know that he bought the property in October of 1928 and announced the move in November of 1928, so we assume that the work was completed in 1929. We know that in 1930, he built a garage at the back of this property. The contractor was Mr. Ed Tinberg, who was a contractor here in Geneva for some time. And but we did not find any building permits per se for the actual move of the house or the completion of the house. I've also included on the far right side of the slide the image of the house as it appeared in 1885 when it was at 4th and State Street, but it's important also to note that Gus and Hattie Beckman made multiple modifications of the house before it was moved to South 6th Street. As I said, it was associated with some very interesting people. I was surprised to learn that Dr. Otto Stader, a doctor of veterinary medicine here in Geneva, lived in this house, and he was quite an acclaimed veterinarian, and he had an office here in Geneva. He was brought here by Colonel Baker from St. Charles because of his expertise in livestock that he demonstrated while he was at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He came here and established the Tri-City Animal Hospital at a house that is now part of Wheeler Park, and lived here for about 6 years before he moved to Ardmore, Pennsylvania. He had been a graduate of colleges in Pennsylvania and moved back there and established the Ardmore Animal Hospital, which was quite a renowned animal hospital. But what he invented while he was at this house was the Stader splint, which received incredible press coverage during World War II because what he had developed for setting the long bones of small animals was converted to setting bones with external armature for military casualties. The Stader splint was used quite extensively in both the United States Armed Services and the Canadian Armed Services. However, even though the house has a history tied to Mr. Stader, the front door that is under consideration this evening is not related to his time here, because at that time the porch has been identified through oral tradition as being an open or a screened porch. So the next occupants who appeared to have been the impetus for the existing front door are Harry Logan and Alice Eleanor Holmes Monroe. Very interesting couple. I've elaborated on that in the staff analysis, but Mrs. Monroe was blind since the age of 3 and was an accomplished concert pianist, but also operated and conducted classical radio music programs from this house, where she lived for over from 1956 to 2003. And her husband also, after 1968, closed up his record shop in downtown Chicago and operated out of this house as a mail order business for classical albums and reel-to-reel tapes. The only building permit that I could find associated with the house was a $500 permit for alterations to the dwelling. This permit was pulled in the month they purchased the house. There's a question as to what those alterations were, because according to, again, to oral tradition, Mrs. Monroe, being a classically trained pianist, had a grand piano in one of the rooms, and it's thought that the modifications may be related to making accommodations for that grand piano. Nonetheless, oral tradition through the family that's been passed down suggests that Mrs. Monroe, who was quite an accomplished baker and cook in spite of her blindness, was found it very disfavorable to have a powder room opening up off of the kitchen, and at her request, the door to the powder room was moved to what had been the original open porch, and the open porch was closed in to become a foyer. That seems to have a lot of credence, as people, as you may know, people with sensory deprivation have heightened senses with other of their functioning senses, and so that story seems to be quite accurate. The issue is we are not sure when that work was done. It may have been done before they moved into the house in 1956, or it may have occurred before Mr. Monroe died in 1972. In any case, the door and side lights appear, based on construction and details, appears to be an earlier door, perhaps from the 1920s or 1940s. However, there is also speculation that this is a door from the period of when it was installed. The door consists of a 6-panel door with 2 flanking side lights with 4 square panes of glass, and then a blind transom or fan light above the door. The reason for the request is that the door itself is deteriorating, and as are the side lights. The side light panels, as you can see on the left and in the detail in the center, has been reinforced with an interior panel being attached to the rather thin panels of the side lights. The panels have split because of their thinness over time. Also, the right image shows that it's fairly early hardware, and again, the latch is beginning to show its signs of wear from being installed for over 50 years, or approximately 50 years. Some other details, again, showing the center most striking. You can see daylight through the crack of the very thin panels in the door. And on the right, you can see where the door has some rot and some damage that has been repaired several times over time and is failing again. One of the reasons for this request, as identified in the staff report, is that the threshold itself is leaking into the basement area below this foyer, and that's due to improper or non-existent threshold flashing, and the only way to really truly repair that is to remove the door unit and install proper flashing beneath the door. So the applicants have furnished you very detailed information about what the selection is. It's being proposed to be a fiberglass, insulated fiberglass door with a smooth finish, which meets our criteria in our guidelines. The unit will be a 3/4 glass vision unit with matching side lights, so the side lights will be slightly deeper and the panes themselves will be rectangular rather than square as exists today. The glass dividers will have simulated divided lights with the simulated buttons attached to both the inside and exterior surface of the glass. The glass is called out to be a satin etched, so it's not a clear, but it's a slightly obscured vision glass. And the hardware that's been selected replicates what is presently on the door, so kind of tying into that, and then but giving a more secure latching system, modern latching system. So finally, for comparison, put together this diagram for you that shows the doors in near equal perspective, as close as I could get them, and kind of giving you a side-by-side comparison as to what the existing door looks like and what's being proposed. So with that, I would turn the podium over to Mary Agnes to elaborate on anything I may have missed and to answer your questions and provide you additional details on this project. Mary Agnes?
Hi. Hi.
Hello.
Oh, one last thing. I did give to all commissioners, for the record, I did give you the cost estimate that we received today for the repair of the existing door and side lights. Thank you. I'm sorry.
So the door has always been a little bit thin, and over the last 2 years has started to crack and pieces are falling out. And so we started getting water in the basement, and then the contractor came out and the sill is all rotted and it's one piece. So the whole thing has to come out to be repaired. And when the door really started to fall apart, we decided that it might be better to get a new door, more energy efficient, and something in more keeping with the house, because all of the doors in the house are 4-panel. So a 6-panel door, probably, Michael and I were talking, and it might have just come from a salvage. Originally, we know that Mrs. Monroe moved the powder room because when we replaced the flooring in the kitchen, the hole was there for the toilet. And then when we had remodeled the house in Mrs. Monroe's memorial in 2010, all of her children and grandchildren came back, so we let them go through the house and be there by themselves because they had grown up there. And they, in fact, told us that it was a small bathroom, and she didn't like it at all, that it was right off the kitchen. So there was originally, before the people we bought it from, there was a carved door, which the Monroes had never taken off once they enclosed it. So the people who bought the house took it with them for their house in North Carolina. So, I mean, I wish that door was there. We would definitely spend the money to have custom side lights if the side lights wouldn't work, you know, if they would fall apart because they're pretty fragile. But it's not there, you know, unfortunately. So the previous owner was a flipper, and so he had put those panels on, and the contractor said, unfortunately, if they were to even try to remove them, they would probably come out, which is sad, so. But it's really, there's a lot of caulk on the door too, so.
Any questions from the commissioners?
Well, just looking at this estimate and what needs to be done and some of the unknowns, by the time that the door would get taken apart and put back together again and replaced, and I don't know that there'd be much of an original door left based on some of the photographs we've seen.
Well, and the
So I
other
think
thing
you
that
do
the
need a new
contractor
door.
said was, if he were to take it out and one side broke and then the other side didn't, it would leave the, you know, we wouldn't have anything to put in there, and it would be 4 months, 5 months before a door would ship. So it would either, we'd have to put up a temporary door or board it up. So it does leave us exposed to the elements. The other problem, which I didn't show Michael, but it has an old lock where you push the buttons to keep it unlocked. But even when you push them to lock, the deadbolt doesn't go that far in. And so if we are locked out, we can get in. So it's really, it's really worn out. And I'm just afraid that anything could happen.
So just so we all understand, the existing door, the red one on the left-hand side, is not original to the house?
No.
Okay. And it is a replacement. Any guess when it was put onto the house?
It was put on when the Monroes enclosed the porch.
The porch,
And they put on a powder room and a closet and built a foyer.
okay.
And we kind of don't know. I tried to get a hold of Mary and Mark. But I couldn't, the landline was turned off. So I couldn't get a hold of them. And just from when they visited the house, and they told us that.
Any guess as to what year that was?
Michael thinks that it was 20s or 40s.
20s and 40s.
I believe, no, the door, I believe, is 20s or 40s from the construction of it. The porch was enclosed after November of 1956 and before 1969.
Oh, I see. So it was a scavenged,
That's what it appears.
Door.
The door, the side lights, the whole thing does not appear to be a 1950s, 60s vintage door.
yeah.
It appears to be an earlier door. That's why I believe, and even the blind fan light is not something that was typically found very easily in the 50s and 60s when they were doing this. So it seems to me that, and again, we know there were buildings coming down and what have you in Geneva at that time fairly frequently, and elsewhere, so it just is, it's a curiosity. Again, the best we can date it is in that several-year period from 1956 to, we know it happened before Mr. Monroe moved his record company here in 1969.
So they, it appears they scavenged the door and some, kind of custom built a jamb and a frame and some custom side lights to fit versus in like today's world, you would just install the whole unit. Maybe this is a good example, this pricing of the struggles people have on renovation historically. That's a challenge.
Yep. And even if it was done, it still does not rectify the parts of the wood on the door where you can see light through. That won't be rectified in this. So
Michael, would you say the side lights are like carpenter built on site type of a thing? If that door is scavenged and that frame is site, they built that on site.
My personal opinion, look at the whole thing, is the entire door system was scavenged from some
Oh, okay.
thing.
I see.
The blind transom, the side lights, the door jamb, the whole thing. It's, as Mary Agnes pointed out, it does not match anything else in the house.
Yeah.
It doesn't, we know it was an open porch at one time, and we know that it occurred, again, in that period between 56 and 69. And that type of door surround just wasn't something readily found in that period. I mean, that was the mid-century modern. You typically, people were replacing things with a fairly modern inset door and not find something like that, and so, or not find that on catalogs. So that's what makes me believe that this is pre-World War II and taken from some other site, because again, the Monroes did the remodeling, and they did not move in until 1956. Actually, 1957 is when they moved in.
And after reading your detailed report, Michael, thank you, I guess the part that really stuck in my mind too was the issue that you're having with, it leaks water into the basement during the rain and snow melting events. So that's something that I think is also very important to look at, because that can cause.
Well, it's eroding the foundation.
Yeah.
And we're really concerned about that. But we have to get that problem fixed and then get the foundation fixed right away, probably at the same time. So,
Do you know how long it's been leaking water like that into the basement? Has it been a while?
since the spring.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But what the foundation guy told me was, you gotta fix where the water's coming in, because even if we patch this, water will find its way, and it'll just travel along, and we don't want that. So we may put in some kind of sump pump over there. We have to wait and see how everything goes with the new sill that goes in, if that's the problem.
Any other questions? Comments? Well, somebody want to put together a recommendation?
I'll move to approve the proposed alterations at 418 South 6th Street as presented.
Second,
I'll second.
roll please.
Hartman.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
McManus.
Aye.
Stazen.
Aye.
Zinke.
Aye.
Solomon.
Aye. The ayes have it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Mrs. Zelmer, how long is this going to take, do you think?
Well, if we replace the door, it'll take 5 months to get the door.
The door? Oh, wow.
But he's gonna try and do something with the sill from underneath to stop the.
Yeah.
We're also going to take the downspout.
Have it rebuilt?
Pick
Every
up the
stick.
concrete and put it towards the street so that it gets away from the house.
That makes good sense. Okay,
Yeah.
great. All right. Have fun.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.
Your wife did a great job.
I'm sure she does. Okay, with that, the secretary's report? Or did I skip something?
Not yet. You've got time to skip something else tonight.
Yes.
The staff updates, I just have one quick update, and Jewel and Jensen, Commissioner Jensen, and Al Watts from Preservation Partners might want to jump in, but on Saturday, I did attend the Landmarks Illinois Suburban Preservation Alliance in Naperville. Commissioner Jensen joined us, and Al Watts and Kelsey Shipton from Preservation Partners were there. It's a roundtable opportunity to find out what's going on in neighboring communities and how they're dealing with different problems and issues in their own communities. It was a very lively and good discussion. They were trying to figure out how often we should be meeting as a Suburban Alliance. And I would encourage any of you who would like to hear what other commissions are doing or have them learn from us, which it is a give and take, to plan to attend the next Suburban Alliance, Preservation Alliance. I don't know if Commissioner Jensen or Mr. Watts wants to talk anything more about the meeting or what your observations were.
Well, being new, I really enjoyed the meeting, and I felt like I walked away with a lot of information, and it was nice hearing what the surrounding areas are currently doing and what their struggles are, as well as what's working for them. So it was very educational.
That is the sum total of my report, unless you have questions for me about the Alliance meeting.
I don't think so. New business from the commission.
I just have one thing, and I'll keep it short. I just have some concerns. I like to walk quite a bit, so while I've been walking, I've identified some properties that appear to kind of be a little neglected, historical properties. So I guess the process would be to submit a list to Michael to follow up.
If you submit a list to me, I will bring that up to our code enforcement officer.
Okay.
And then I will have him follow through.
Okay,
If you'd like to give me a list, I would take that.
okay. I do have a list, and I will give it to you, and the reason for that is because my ideas generated when we had the Geneva Bottling Company meeting last month, and I was really bothered by a couple things, and that's something I personally am working out. But then as walking, I'm just trying to educate myself as well, I'm not trying to blame any homeowners or company owners, I'm just trying to understand certain things, so that's the purpose of my list.
So being a little proactive about
Yes.
potentially deferred maintenance or even as far as demo by neglect. I mean, it's not there yet, I'm assuming. I don't know of any that are at that stage yet. Okay. I will gladly take that list and pass that on to code enforcement.
Okay, thank you.
And if anybody else sees something on their travels to the historic district that you want to bring to my attention that you think should be brought up to code enforcement, I'm glad to always receive it by email or telephone call as well.
And living on the east side of the river, in that from my point of view, should be a historic district there, but it's not. There are a number of houses where the roofs have looked awful for at least the last 15 years, and I have called, and nothing is happening about that. And then there are houses that the paint is just falling off in strips, and the house really needs a paint job, and nothing's happening with that either.
I can't speak for code enforcement, but
Of course you can't.
it is a lengthy process at times. So I can't always say there's nothing happening. It may not be happening at a quick pace, but I'm confident that if you have made a report to code enforcement, that there is activity on it.
Okay.
Because I do know that he keeps on top of things and works with homeowners, so.
Okay. Although there has been one good thing on my side of the river. There's a building that's probably from, I'd say, 1895, was covered with asphalt siding. Somebody has bought it, they put an addition on it, they've taken off the asphalt siding. They are restoring the wood siding that was under the asphalt siding. And they are restoring some of the original windows that have stained glass at the top of the window. So that's been fun to watch. Okay.
Very good. Anything from the new business from public?
I have a couple of things.
Sure.
Thanks for having me up here. Al Watts with Preservation Partners. I just wanted to add on to one thing about what Michael was talking about with the Suburban Preservation Alliance. One thing that I found interesting about it is that Landmarks Illinois, who's kind of the advocacy group for the state, is taking a look at how they do their work, and over the next year, they're planning to really make some changes, in particular in their communication strategy and how they communicate about historic preservation. So we can look for that in the future. I think that'll be interesting. Secondly, this is in St. Charles. I apologize, but I'm going to invite you anyway. We have an event this weekend on Saturday. We're doing a history crawl of St. Charles in the Roaring '20s. So if you want to take one and pass around, I invite you to come out. And then finally, I just wanted to inform you that we are going to be doing winter lights in the Japanese garden again this year. And we have applied for a $2,500 grant from ComEd and the, it's a Mayor's Alliance. I don't remember exactly the wording of it. But Mayor Burns sent us a nice letter to go along with it for supporting us. So we're excited. Hopefully we'll get that and we'll have more lights in the garden for you guys to enjoy. So.
Good.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
And second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.